Welcome back. Even as we talk about the end of mental illness, we're still going to answer some of your questions and talk about some of the fun things from Brain in the News. And you have winners.
I have winners that have won the cookbook, Brain Warriors Way cookbook. So if you leave us a question or comment at brainwarriorswaypodcast.com, it enters you into a raffle to win the cookbook. Our winners for this month are Kelly from Sheboygan, Wisconsin, Elisa from Westlake Village, California, Marie from Ridgecrest, California, and Ashley from Springfield, Virginia. So thank you so much for your questions and comments. And if you would be so kind as to leave us a review, positive hopefully, at Apple Podcast, we would also greatly appreciate it.
So Brain in the News, there's so much, but I thought since we always say there's no suffering in getting well, that I just had to talk about chocolate. So there's a chocolate study. Eating dark chocolate may positively affect your mood and relieve depressive symptoms. So BrainMD actually makes Brain in Love, Brain on Joy, so sugar-free, dairy-free, dark chocolate that has 9 grams of fiber. So using data, investigators from University College London in the United Kingdom found that individuals who report eating any dark chocolate in 2 24-hour periods had 70% lower odds of reporting clinically relevant depressive symptoms compared with their counterparts who reported no chocolate consumption at all. This study provides some evidence that consumption of chocolate, particularly dark chocolate, may be associated with reduced odds of clinically relevant depressive symptoms. Chocolate contains a number of psychoactive ingredients, including 2 analogs of anandamide, which produces effects similar to CBD.
Oh, interesting.
And the euphoria from cannabis. So those of you who listen know we're not a fan of cannabis because of the negative impacts on the brain. But if you want to get a cannabis-like effect, a little bit of dark chocolate can help. It also contains phenylethylamine, a neurotransmitter believed to be important in regulating mood.
And isn't that why they call it the International Food of Love?
Right, because PEA or phenylethylamine works on your brainstem to alert you something fun is about to happen. So I think that's my favorite Brain in the News this week. Chocolate is a mood enhancer, but read the label so you're only having things
and you don't want,
that help you rather than hurt you.
You don't want high fructose corn syrup in it, so you want pretty clean chocolate.
Pretty clean chocolate. And then there's another study out. Actually, I don't want to do this one. I want to do this one on homelessness. Brand new study saying people who are homeless experience a disproportionately high lifetime prevalence of traumatic brain injury, according to a new study that was published in The Lancet Public Health. So in this study suggests that 1 in 2 homeless people had experienced a significant traumatic brain injury before they were homeless.
Wow.
And the lifetime prevalence is 10 times what it is in the general population.
Wow.
So when I was talking about in the beginning of the end of mental illness, that homeless man at the corner of Hollywood and Vine, rather than go, you have a mental illness. Well, how do we know he's not dealing with the chronic effects of one or perhaps several traumatic brain injuries? If we talked about Tamara, she was in 19 car accidents, actually the severe one that gave you the TBI look in your brain.
And it's everywhere you go. So I was with Chloe. She just got this role in this film. And the producer, as I'm walking out, he, for some reason, struck up this conversation with me and asked what I do. And I started talking to him. He's like, oh my gosh, I had a TBI. I was in a coma. I had 62 stitches in my head. He's like, here, give me your finger. And he like shows me he's got this soft spot in his head. I'm like, well, you probably are a candidate for coming to one of our clinics. He said, it's affected me so horribly ever since. And people actually, he's like, I feel like people blame me for the way that I've changed. And it was just right when he said that, I thought that's exactly what it is you're talking about. He feels like people have blamed him for the changes because he can't remember people's names.
It's like you can't see properly and people whack you for it. When
this is a producer.
You have no control over it.
And I was just like, wow, it's just everywhere you go at every level of life. This is an issue.
So one more quick brain in the news, because it goes with this, cell phone distraction study. The study, published in JAMA, reviewed 2,500 emergency department patients who sustained head and neck injuries resulting from cell phone use. They found a steady increase from 1998 to 2017 over the time, with notable spikes. Pokemon Go is an augmented reality game that requires players to track animated characters on their phone, was one of the causes of the spikes.
So it wasn't ESPN?
It wasn't ESPN.
Okay, hello. I discovered Dr. Amen a couple months ago through a friend. I've been a huge fan ever since. Started to read your books and listen to your podcast, mainly because my son just turned 5, got diagnosed with ADHD. Already contacted the clinics and we're thinking of coming to you and getting him evaluated. My question is, can you give me 100% accurate diagnosis with the brain SPECT imaging? I want to help him and we'll be starting shortly with OT, ABA.
It's a behavior therapy.
Okay. Through school, but I would like to know exactly what we're dealing with. He also has some sensory issues. I understand that in some states they don't diagnose till 8 years old. Would it be beneficial to do it when he's this young, or should we wait for his brain to develop some more? I'd be very grateful for your input. You both are my saving grace in this fight, not only because of your expertise with ADD, but also for my brain health and teaching me how I can be healthier for him. Thank you, Daniela.
So that is a wonderful question. And scans don't give you 100% accurate diagnosis. What scans give you is 100% of what's the child's or your physiology. So what does your brain, how does your brain function? Now, we always put the scans together with the clinical data that we have, and that's how we end up making a diagnosis. If you read my book, Healing ADD, what you realize is it's just not one thing. It's 7 different things. So we'll be able to know with his symptoms and his scan, what's the next thing to do to get him healthy. But rather than diagnose him with a mental illness, you have ADHD, this is how his brain works. This is how we can improve it. And children who are not diagnosed till 8 or 9 who have ADD almost always have low self-esteem.
Yeah, I was about to say that.
Because they have struggled. So I'm not a fan of waiting. I'm a fan of intervening as soon as you're concerned.
But that doesn't necessarily mean medication, like stimulants right away for all kids, correct?
So in the end of mental illness, there's this really great chapter toward the end called Mind Meds versus Nutraceuticals. And in it, I'm so happy with this section. It really should be its own chapter. It's, well, what do I do before I put someone on medication?
Especially a child.
And especially anybody. So symptoms of ADHD include short attention span, distractibility, disorganization, procrastination, impulsivity, and restlessness. So here are 11 things to do before I would start medication. Attack all of the Bright Minds risk factors. So you've heard us talk about those, and we're going to go through each one of them again as we talk about the book. Eliminate artificial dyes, preservatives, and sweeteners from the family's diet. 2, minimize or eliminate processed foods, anything in a box. 4, try an elimination diet for just 3 weeks. Eliminate sugary food, gluten, dairy, corn, soy, and other categories of potentially allergenic foods. And then once you do that for 3 weeks, add 1 back at a time just to see. 5, try a higher protein, lower, simple carbohydrate diet. Exercise 30 minutes for 5 times a week. go for a fast walk or play table tennis. 6, increase sleep and good sleep habits. 7, decrease screen time. 8, work closely with an integrative physician because you want to check for ferritin, vitamin D, magnesium, zinc, and thyroid levels. 9, I have a list of nutraceuticals to try, especially EPA fish oil. 10, consider neurofeedback. 11, start kids a bit later in school. The youngest kids in a class are more likely to be diagnosed with ADHD. 12, let's think about medication. So notice there's a process to let's really work to get his brain healthy. We're not opposed to stimulants. We're just opposed to that's the first thing to do. Because at 5 or even at 25, if he has ADD for real, if he inherited from his mother or father, he's going to have it 4 months later after you've done these interventions.
Right. One of the things that's so interesting, because she said, can I get 100% accurate diagnosis with a scan, as though the scan's the only thing we do, which a lot of people think. Whenever I'm helping someone through the process, they're usually shocked to hear that it's like a 2-day process, right? It's a big process when you come to see us because we want to be extremely thorough. You've got some online tests to do. You've got a whole bunch of paperwork. You talk to a historian. You get a scan. You see the doctor. Sometimes you get blood work. Usually you get blood work. There's this whole big process, and we put the whole thing together. And rather than going in and you don't talk to someone for 15 minutes and walk out with a prescription.
Or even an hour.
It's not like that. So it's very, very different. We've got functional medicine doctors. We've got therapists. We've got neurofeedback. We've got hyperbaric oxygen. We've got so many things that we use as tools after you have a very thorough evaluation.
I mean, think that's what cardiologists do.
Right.
That they take your history and they look at your heart in many different ways. And like our cardiologist, who we love, I mean, he talks to you about diet. He talks to you about exercise. He talks to you about
It's a stress test. Right.
So we are so grateful you're part of our Brain Warrior community.
And if you want to be entered into a raffle to win the cookbook, the Brain Warriors Way cookbook that I will sign for you, please go to brainwarriorswaypodcast.com, leave a question or a comment, and we will enter you into that raffle. And we would be grateful if you would leave us a review at Apple Podcast, and positive preferably.
And you can also sign up for our live class that Tana and I are going to do January, February, and March. And if you pre-order the book, The End of Mental Illness at endofmentalillness.com, you get all sorts of gifts, including access to 6 of my public television specials, Tana's cookbook, the 10-day brain boost, and right away you can read the introduction and chapter 1 of The End of Mental Illness. Help us end mental illness now.
If you're enjoying the Brain Warriors Way podcast, please don't forget to subscribe so you'll always know when there's a new episode. And while you're at it, feel free to give us a review or 5-star rating, as that helps others find the podcast.
If you're considering coming to Amen Clinics or trying some of the brain healthy supplements from BrainMD, you can use the code podcast10 to get a 10% discount on a full evaluation at amenclinics.com or a 10% discount on all supplements at brainmdhealth.com. For more information, give us a call at 855-978-1363.